It's that time of the month. We're going to do a July update. It's actually the last day of the month, so we're barely getting this in. But we're going to show you what's changed over the last month. Some areas may not too much, but if you go back and watch the June update and watch this one, then you'll hopefully see a lot of difference in what's growing, what stages things are at, and how we're kind of turning crops over. And so here we'll start at this hoop house here. I don't think last time we had the beans, or if they were just coming up, but those were potatoes and now they're beans. And after the beans, we'll probably start putting fall spinach in. Here we're just finishing up the beets that we had planted. So that probably was all full of beets, these beds, and those we're just finishing up. We got celery that we've been really harvesting now for the last 3-4 weeks. It's a lot nicer in here than last year when we had it outside. And here we have our zucchinis that we're still picking from, but you can tell there's definitely some more yellowing, some wilting going on. But we actually have our second planting. They're just coming on. We'll be picking probably this week, next week in the second planting. So we'll take this planting out, and this row is going to be fall carrots. Here we have some green onion, successions of green onions, and it's interesting. These here were planted at the same time. These are stunted, actually a little more yellowing going on, and that's because of the squashes. I was hoping the onions would do fine, and they did where we had them planted, where we put them in earlier in the season, but these were put in right when the zucchini and squashes were at their prime. And when they're at their prime, they're really crawling into the beds next to them and kind of taking a lot of the water and nutrients from those beds. So it does stunt the plants. They'll hopefully come out of it once those crops come out. But our mini sweet peppers, we haven't started to pick yet, but there's some really nice green peppers on. Here's our blue potatoes that we'll be harvesting shortly. We've harvested a few just for our eating, but they're really nice. We really like them. And here's our carrots that we're working on, successions of carrots that we're working on. So we're just finished up this bed and started this bed today. And we're actually, this bed here, it might be hard to tell down here. Towards the top you might see a little bit better, but we have leeks in there. So we used to do 2 plantings of leeks. We just do 1 now because the early planting of leeks never turned out right. And so our fall leeks do a lot better, and that's what that bed is. And we can actually show you how we do the leeks. We actually have just pretty much a handle to a tool, and we stick it in the ground. Here's an example here. And we stick it down about 8-9 inches, and our leeks, we just put these in yesterday. So we just plop these down. They disappear down in there, but that's what gives you a nice white neck to the leeks. So it kind of, a lot of times people will plant them on the surface and then you can hill them up and do that, but that takes time. If your soil's nice and loose deep down, you can just put a deep hole, put it in, and it'll blanch the neck up to the surface without you having to hill it. So. And here's our lettuces that we're harvesting now. I got head lettuce at the top, salad greens down here, and the next planting of salad greens. And this is a little bit of head lettuce. Our cucumber patch, which is pretty much done. We're getting some nice cucumbers. There's a few plants at the top are still nice, but we're gonna take this out, and these are gonna be carrots. So we're gonna do our next planting of carrots here. And then these 2 beds and that bed over there are gonna be fall carrots. So fall carrots you wanna get in end of July, beginning of August. You can actually squeeze them in middle of August, especially depending on the fall you have. But if you wait past that, your carrots probably won't mature, and they'll just be small. Because your days are rapidly getting shorter, the days are getting cooler. So you need to get them in end of July, beginning of August. So that bed there, I'll probably plant tomorrow, which will be August 1st, and then a week later, I'm hoping to get these 2 beds and that bed planted, and that's gonna be our winter storage carrots. And it's not as much as we planted last year, but last year we had way more than we needed. And I know the soil there is really nice, And I actually, instead of planting 4 rows, I'm probably gonna plant 6 rows per bed. So because I know our garden to a certain extent as far as how things are gonna do, how close I can plant things, I know I don't have to plant as many beds because I can fit more rows per bed in that section. Here's our big hoop house. This is really filled in. We got our turmeric and ginger coming in between the strawberries there. And those strawberries are left in to just harvest runners off of to start plants for our hoop house that we're gonna plant in the fall for the spring. So here's our next planting of beets. These are pretty much ready. They're nice and big, beautiful. And these are our green peppers that we're starting to harvest. And just a few tomatoes up at the top, about a half row of, we got some cherries, aromas, and yellow tomatoes. Our main crop of tomatoes is in the other hoop house. Here we are outside, and we can show you something that's really odd. It was actually perked up more this morning. But these are watermelons, and about a week ago they looked beautiful. But now you can see there's still some sections that are not wilted, but I can tell they're not as healthy. They're not as lush and green. And what happened is after the rain, we had about 2 inches of rain. And before the rain, I actually irrigated as well because I usually don't trust the weather this time of year too much. And so if it needs watered, I water. I'll try not to water too much, but between watering and then we got about 2 inches of rain, and not only is there 2 inches here, it gets from the hoop house coming down. So there's probably like 6-7 inches of water dumped on this bed. And when the watermelons get saturated, the roots can't transfer moisture up to the leaves. And so I'm hoping after a couple of days, it's supposed to be dry here for 3-4 days. I'm hoping once it dries out, they'll perk back up. But I mean, there's a lot of, you can see, and there's a lot of beautiful melons that were forming, some really nice big ones that I'm hoping that they'll come through the stress of that. If not, then I guess I learned not to plant melons that close to the hoop house. But you don't get everything right. There's always mistakes. So here's our pumpkins, and they would do the same thing if it was too wet, but they look fine. So there's some that are starting to turn. We did a smaller pumpkin this year. This is Sugar Baby. They're all pumpkins. This is an autumn harvest. It's a little bit different shape. And we harvested all of our gold potatoes. They were probably in last time. And here's our onions are still in, but our sweet potatoes are really starting to carpet this and fill it in. These onions will hopefully be out in 2 to 3 weeks. And if they're not, they're going to be hard to pull because these sweet potatoes will have this filled in. These beds were garlic last month, and they're harvested. So you can see the garlic's out, and we had our slips, I think I mentioned, planted in between. And those are really starting to fill in. Now they're a little bit behind those sweet potatoes, but they still should have plenty of time to put on nice potatoes, which is going to be a nice option if it works out well. And here's our hedge, which seems like it just gets more colorful with each month. It's a lot of flowers. Some bumblebees on the raspberries.
Or purple martins.
They're still around. They're probably, I think they're little ones. I wonder if they're actually flying with them now. There's a lot more. There's one that just came out. That looks like a smaller one. See it? It's just right on the edge there. I wonder if it's going to take off or if it's not quite ready to fly. It's probably not quite ready to fly because it would fly with us here. Maybe not. See if it'll fly if I get closer. Oh, it's gone. Anyways, here's our raspberries. They're actually flowering now, so there's some bees on them. Here's what a flower cluster looks like. So these produce heavy into the fall. These will all be raspberries.
And yes, we do have Japanese beetles too.
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Seems like they've let up a little bit on, they're not as, I mean there's still some on them, but. And here's our successions of carrots. So we had where we're harvesting, and then we had another row yet next to the zucchini, but then we have these rows here. And these were all potatoes last month. So we just finished up our potato harvest this morning. Then after the carrots, we have lettuce. So just succession plantings of lettuce here. Head lettuce, salad greens, and then we're gonna come up. This will be lettuce. We have a couple more trays that need planted that'll fill these rows in. Here we just planted, yesterday we planted our last planting of brassicas. We got cabbage, broccoli, kohlrabi under there. And here we have 3 beds. I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna wait a little bit to plant this. We might need it for lettuce. If not, I'm gonna just cover crop these beds. And these were where the last rows of potatoes were. And I think last video we had our winter squashes put in and they were under cover. So now our covers are off. See our plants, they look beautiful. Beautiful. So yeah, there's butternut, spaghetti, acorn, and our little bit of sweet potatoes in between that are starting to fill in. And here's one row of strawberries that we kept from this year. And so we renovated it. I don't know if it was renovated last time, but it's renovated now. We took a weed whacker and I cut all the old growth off, and I came through and put a light layer of wood chips to kind of help cover all the dead material, because a lot of those old leaves carry disease, and so I put the wood chips on top to kind of cover those leaves so that disease doesn't spread as easily to the new growth. And so they look like they're doing pretty good. They're coming back nice. And here's our new section of strawberries that we're working on setting runners. And these are strawberries too that are interplanted with cabbages and broccoli. And it seems like the strawberries don't mind it. They're really not stunted at all. So yeah, these will be harvested in probably a couple weeks. This cabbage will be harvested maybe in a week or two. They'll be in the CSA shares. Here we have melons that aren't doing, I don't know, just must not be a good year for melons. There's a lot of bacterial wilt in it. There's some spots where they're okay. I think we'll get a few melons, but yeah, I don't know if I need to just completely put them maybe in the back garden. But yeah, these onions we were harvesting for our shares, for fresh onions. But you see some of the tops are starting to die back. That we'll harvest them for storing here soon. And here's our, I don't think so. That almost looked like a hornworm moth, but it wasn't. So here's our tomatoes. It's kind of big. That's more of a fly, I think, than a moth. So here we have our determinants. Those are our nice, bigger slicing tomato. So here's one that we'll probably pick. They're really heavy. They're pulling the plant down to the ground.
It's like a bowl of soup and a tomato.
Yeah. And here's our early girl, our indeterminate tomatoes. And we prune the plant up from the ground as we harvest, and that keeps disease from creeping up the plant. And it allows more airflow to come through here. And our strawberries are actually going to go underneath here. We'll plant them in about a month and a half. We're going to plant them underneath here. So that also allows sunlight to get down to the ground by pruning them. And there's our Swiss chard and kale. And these onions here are really flopping over. So they're kind of starting the curing stage. We'll pull them soon. I should have had them pulled probably before the rain, but it's just one of those. We have so many things going on, can't keep on everything. And last month, I think, I'm not sure if we had the sugar snap pea still in or not. If they weren't in, the potatoes were probably just barely coming up. If they were in, the potatoes were planted, you just couldn't see them. So about 2 weeks before we pulled the sweet sugar snap pea plants, we plant our potatoes in between there, and then we pull our plants, and it takes about 2 weeks for the spuds that you plant to kind of start appearing from the ground. And so really that's 1 month of growth, these potatoes, what you see here. So in another month they'll probably be flowering and starting to form potatoes, and in 2 months they'll be out of the ground. So potatoes are actually a pretty quick crop if you can plant them right with other crops. And yeah, there's just another hedge here, asparagus, all just kind of a variety of things. Kale if we need it interplanted. So we actually haven't harvested it all, we haven't needed it, but it's nice to have enough. So I think that's it for the garden up here. Hopefully it's looking all right. And yeah, go back and watch the June and watch July and see how it's changed. When you're out here every day, you don't notice things as much probably, but in a month's time, you probably see big differences. So until next time, eat well, live well. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. Like the video if you like it, and yeah, support what we're doing. So until next time, again, I will say eat well, live well.